So this evening we have got my waffle of an introduction. Then Gary's going to go on to the news, what's new in the FileMaker world, which I'm sure there's plenty. Followed by Gary's going to present his hardware matters due to some recent experiences he's had. He's going to share those with us, the importance of hardware. And I'm sure it won't be at all dry because Gary will not do anything dry.
I'll try not to. Try not to.
Then we got Ara wants to, well, actually I cajoled him into it, but he's very happy to share some issues he's had with ODBC lately. So I'm looking forward to hearing where he's got with that. And then we've got a period of chatting about anything anyone wants to chat. So we've got about 40 minutes for that. And then Andrew Duncan is going to join us from Sydney in Australia to talk about his their latest DataBuzz release for integrating with QuickBooks, which I'm really looking forward to because I've used his stuff before and it really is excellent. Going to be interesting to see where that fits into the Claris FileMaker, etc. world these days. And then we'll finish around 9. If Andrew finishes early, we'll just carry on the chat from earlier. So I think that's about it for tonight. As always, anyone who's got any questions, just jump in there and raise your hand, ask, whatever. Over to you, Gary.
Cool. Right. Hopefully you'll be able to see my screen in a second. Should be this one. Here we go. Hopefully you can see that. Everyone see the news? Give me a thumbs up if you can. If someone can. Yeah, good. Excellent. Right. Okay. First things in the news I want to go through is, as always with this, I've got to thank Penny. She does all the hard work on this, and so does Ben. They're constantly looking at what's happening and what's being published. So they provide me most of this. The links will be provided at the end of the session. For some reason, I can't seem to paste the links in the chat for some reason. I'll try that this time and try and get them done. But they'll either go in the chat live or they'll be sent over to Jul to update after that. First things, known issues of printing in Claris with Ventura. There's a known post that was on there on the Claris's page for issues with this. It's just workarounds and something to be mindful of. Ventura's changed all of its core OS and all of its system preferences, which is fun. If ever you've got onto Ventura, you'll like the way they've done the system preferences. If anyone's on it, I hate it. They've tried to make it an iPhone. They've turned it into a view that you can't extend. It's horrible. It just doesn't work. But as a knock-on effect, there's some issues with FileMaker and printing with that. So the article's there. It's worth reading. If you've got any print solutions within your solutions, then have a look because some of these may be causing you problems. We haven't suffered it yet because we haven't moved anyone onto that OS yet. But if you go and buy a brand new Mac today, that will be the only OS you get. So, you got
yeah I've had that issue basically.
Yeah,
I've encountered that bug.
Yeah, so it's not good, but there is a workaround. The nice thing is there are workarounds, so there's ways to get around it. So the important thing is Claris has done the heavy lifting for you, found the workaround and told you how to get around it, which is good. Other one is which was working with different data types and comparisons. This is a really good article. So it's about literally how certain types of data types in your fields, how you interact with them, how the back-end system of FileMaker works with those data types, how it is functional, how it's then going to analyze the data that you put within those data sets. That's only the snippet at the top of this article. This article's got as you can see, the links at the bottom that are there. They've got a lot of detail in there of how the data types are working within the latest version of FileMaker. So a worthwhile read. I know Penny and Ben are working with me. They've gone through this and started looking at how we're structuring some of our data sets, what we put in our solutions, what's the best practice, best ways of then housing your information within your solutions. Really good read, interesting to see how they work and how FileMaker is using those data sets within your solutions. a little one which is useful for most people, but it depends how up to date you need to stay. Obviously, you deal with a lot of different clients out there that are running solutions. It's hard sometimes to get your clients to upgrade their OSs and go to the later versions. Obviously, certain versions of software have been deprecated, but I like the idea that Claris put this link out saying if you have been deprecated, but you need to get hold of an old version because you can't upgrade, they've put this page out. So these versions you can get with the old operating. So if you've still got someone who's still running Mojave, it was troublesome to try and find the link for the download of 19.3.2 that would work with it. They published this and put it out there and says you can still get these versions. You can click them and download the full install versions. So it's useful. It's not something you just go to the end up going to the main page and go, right, brilliant, I'm only presented with the latest 19.4 or whatever. You can get the older versions. I don't know how far back they're going to go with this because this post only does these versions. It'll be nice if they go back a bit more potentially, but I suppose they probably won't, because really anyone running Mojave really should be having a serious talking to and saying you need to upgrade. That's very old. It's not had any software updates for probably a year and a half now. So it's something you need to address and have a look at. But it's useful, the post is there and there's links to it. So older versions if you need them. Other thing, EngageU has posted their stuff onto their YouTube. So they've created a YouTube page and they've posted some presentations out there. So worthwhile look at what they've got posted there. It only came about 2-3 weeks ago. But they seem to be posting stuff regularly on there. Christian can probably give some inside information on that, bearing in mind he's in there. But he can do that afterwards and let us know what the schedule is of releasing that. But it looks like they're releasing certain things of the presentations throughout each week. So it's worthwhile. Bookmark it, have a look. There's some great presentations in there. This is one from Solion. Interesting way to deal with scheduling a regular request from server on, say, a web service to call a service to update something. One thing that you would know, if you regularly do something on a script, you'd start a script, you'd execute a script, and then you end a script. So you get 3 lines in your log. And the problem is if you're running something on a recurring every minute process, your log just fills up like you wouldn't believe. It just really, really does fill up quite quickly. So they've got methodologies in here of how to do this. And they've created a hybrid approach of you can run a script within a loop, within a process, and it will auto start. And you end up with one entrance on the log saying this script's running, and it will run. And they even explain the scheduling. If you schedule something to run every minute and it takes 3 minutes to run and 30 seconds, it will then schedule it at the next full minute when the other schedule finishes. So it's quite clever, even if it runs longer. So it'll finish at 3 minutes 52. It will go forward a minute to the next full minute, say 3 minutes 40, and then run at the next available minute delay after that. So you're not getting something that's constantly chasing its tail. It's a clever article, worthwhile having a look at it. If you're doing anything with regular scripts on servers, have a look. And another one, this is an update of a post that was already there, which is exchange rates revisited. It's a really good article. The advantage of it now is the fact that they posted in the article is now free. So if you want to obtain any exchange rate, pretty much any exchange rate, at any given point in time, you can now fire a web service to here. You could give it the appropriate string and you'll get a JSON response back that you can then use. You can set your base currency as whatever you want it to be. If you only get it in one currency, so forth for you, then so be it. The advantage is you can do the times. So you can say, I want to know what it was last Monday, the Monday before that, the Monday before that. So if you've missed it from that point of view, you'll be able to go back and then capture your exchange rates and so forth. So yeah, that's that. Some interesting things for the diary I mentioned before, so it's worth noting. .fmp is 1st to 3rd of June. FMK 23 is in 21st, 23rd of June. I haven't got any more dates that I'll bring, but before the next event, which will be, God, where are we? March, April, May, sometime in May. I'm sure there'll be more dates that I'll come up with in the calendar after that, which I will add to those and update. So registrations are out on some of these already, so it's worthwhile you jumping on there and doing that, certainly if you're going to visit.
Has EngageU been announced in Antwerp yet? The dates? I know that they're doing it in Antwerp, but I don't know if they've announced the dates yet.
I don't think
yes,
I'm not seeing the dates.
did.
They have announced it.
I think that's it's just been announced.
Yeah, the date announced. They're on the FMBug website.
Right, we'll update those. That's fine. That's my mistake. I missed it.
Christian, put them up. Christian has already put them up there in the chat.
Excellent. Well done. Thanks, Christian. Thanks, mate. So they're the dates on that. And the rest of the stuff will happen in the virtual bar, which there's later, and we will discuss many things, I'm sure. I said plus a presentation in there, but I might do the presentation before I was going to do something, but I'll just mention, I'll do that now. So before I finish the news, which I will end that now, I just want to present something else. The exchange rate thing works really well. I did it in something else, which I'm trying to find the bloody screen. Oh, we're done with it now. I ended up doing something in Click, basically, to do something. So I'm just going to share this to show you how easy it was to do. I was just surprised how simple this was. If you can all see my screen, fingers crossed, yes you can. Excellent. So there's a list of exchange rates. I was doing it in Click, so my scripting in here was really simple. So please load, please load. Here we go. Right, so from here, so all I do is I connect to the exchange rates table. I then grab the code of what I wanted. I bring it down as a source. At this time, I grabbed just the standard delimiter of the base currency. You can change that in the string if you want. So I was getting everything in euros, and then I just basically loaded that and grabbed the GB one, and it did basically a process to reconvert from the rate into all the other rates. So I then said my base currency was sterling. You can do that with anyone. It's simple. You just find the relevant rate and divide it out. And what you end up with is a table which then gives you all the rates at the given date and time if you wanted it. As you can see, it was in euros, I converted it to GB, and it ends up saying GB currency is 1. So, and then you get all the rates for all the currencies that you can use. You can then stamp that with any date you want. So if you wanted a history, certainly from a finance point of view, you can do that. So really easy, really simple. I was doing the same thing, and I'd already done that in Click, and then the article came out saying they'd done an update on that thing that Penny sent me. I was like, I've done exactly the same thing. So I can corroborate, works really well. So really good. And that is the end of the news. So that's what we've got. I think I'm doing the next bit as well. So
you are doing the next bit. You're straight into the next bit, unless anyone's got any comments they want to make about any other topics.
Anyone? Yeah. Anything they want to comment or anything? If not, I'll jump into the next bit. So cool. Fine. I now need to rearrange all my 400 screens I've got open, which is always a fun task. Right, let's just present this. This is going to be short and sweet, but to the point, I think. So we've all known for a very long time that Claris has been saying to us, do not run your FileMaker server on a little crappy Mac Mini that's been 12 years old and sitting in the corner. But you will still go ahead and do it anyhow. And you decide to go, well, yeah, the client's only got 100 quid for a machine, so I'll throw an old Mac Mini in because I can, and it's fine and it works. It will work, yes, it will. But if you try and get it to do any heavy lifting, it will fail, and it will fail big time. So what normally happens on any FileMaker machine, you get the minimum specs, and this is the problem you find with all your clients, all your vendors, everyone you talk to, and they go, here's the minimum spec. Oh, why am I buying a machine bigger than that? That's rubbish. I don't need anything bigger than that. Well, sometimes you do, and you really should be taking a little bit of time to work out what solution you're going to run on those, on what you're building for them. If it's a simple invoice program that they do 4 invoices a week, run it on anything you like, it doesn't matter. But then you find out you built the invoice program and they say, oh yeah, by the way, we've partnered with a US entity and we're importing 1 million invoices in a week. And you're like, well, I didn't kind of build it for that. So you have to then cater for what your machine's going to do, how the server's going to function. I will start off with the fact that know what your server is doing. Really understand what your server's doing. Use monitoring tools, use the login that comes with your server. look at the performance threshold on your server admin, find out what it's doing. If it's telling you that the CPU is running at 95% all the time and you've got 2 meg of disk space free, you've got a problem. These are obvious things that you all know, but I just wanted to state the fact that really hardware does matter. Now, the reason why I'm saying this and why I'm doing this is because most of the time you run on these sort of solutions. Now, the one on the right-hand side, cloud, that you've got scope to do anything. We've got AWS, we've got Claris Cloud, we've got various options available to us. You've got other people that are providing hosting solutions as well. By and large, most people, if they can't go to cloud and they're on-prem only, they're picking either of the other two. It's going to be a Mac Mini because they want to run on a Mac, or they want to run on a PC and they might get a really nice grey box that's in the middle that everyone really loves, those lovely Dell towers or whatever. But sometimes that's not enough for what you want to do. So then you start going, well, you get to play with some really big toys, which is what I've been lucky enough to play with of late. So we put our new servers in for our new VMs, and we threw this box together. So that's a dual core, 24 cores in each core, in each processor, 768 gig of RAM, 10 gig iSCSI, and it's running attached with a 24 disk high-end Dell SSD RAID. Now, we put that in, that's running all of our infrastructure. It runs FileMaker and a load of other servers and other bits and pieces for us. But I was lucky enough that when we put this in, it was running nothing. So I loaded up our FileMaker servers on it and gave it all the spec. I gave it everything. So see what it did. I can vouch, flooding your FileMaker server with 700 gig of RAM doesn't do anything. It really doesn't do anything. There is a threshold, and do look at it, because we've been only running about 32 to 40 gig of RAM on each of our servers. Putting 700 made no difference at all, barely even touched the surface. It hit its threshold limit of around about 45 and stopped. It went, I've got enough, I don't need any more. The CPUs, yes, it does make a difference. If you're doing a high amount of computational stuff, you've got hundreds of calculations in there, that's going to help, absolutely. But I would always lean to, we run with 4 cores at the moment, so I gave it, needless to say, I gave it all 24 of one processor and thought, well, what's it going to do? Barely touched the surface again. It got to about 6 cores was our threshold that we monitored, running various commands and bits and pieces. So my point is, look at what server you're buying. If you can't afford a full rack server fully loaded with this sort of amount of spec, I would urge you to go with, yes, cloud is always an option if you need on-prem. The new Mac Mini is looking extremely fast, extremely fast. The advantage of the new Mac Mini, I can tell you, is don't buy the 512 SSD, definitely buy the 1 terabyte. The 1 terabyte apparently has got a very different SSD hard drive in it, which runs about 2 to 3 times faster than the 512. So put the 1 terabyte in, pay the extra 150 quid or 200 quid for the 1 terabyte upgrade. You will get massive read-write performance and I/O on that. So it's worth getting that little investment more if you are going to go with that. I would always lean towards running Ubuntu on it, run the Linux version of it if you can, because it's so much faster. So that's definitely the approach I would go down. And also the benefit of that over like Windows is you get half your specifications. If you're running 24 gig of RAM on a Windows machine, you can run it on 12, 16 on the Ubuntu version. So that's definitely worth looking at. The bit that for us, because most of you know our history, we've got a lot of servers, a lot of data. We move an awful lot of data around every night. So I've got to back all this stuff up. So we run our normal FileMaker backups and we log those. For us, it's definitely, as I said, the CPU, the RAM barely makes a difference. The bit that's going to make your difference is your hard drive. It's the speed of the hard drive makes all the difference to the users, how they're operating on the machine. And certainly if you're running parallel backups or on the new version, you'll be running different backups anyhow. But the point is if you're running any backup processes during the day and you're doing those live when people are in it, you need the fastest disk access. So when it stuns the actual drive, the actual database, it's for a small amount of time, does the backup, and the users will barely notice it. So we couldn't do that on a lot of our systems because they're just too big. Doesn't matter how much we've built our systems, we've got to tweak our systems a bit more to then make that compatible. So what happened is, this is one of our servers that was backing up normally, and it just backed up at night. So you can see here, it was scheduled to back up at 10 past 10. It finished at 14 minutes past 10 every night. It just merrily went on its way, 4 minutes to do a backup. That's our warehousing system. Everyone's out of it. That's backing up all the logs, all the transactional logs from 50 odd iPads that are hitting it throughout the day. And that was on the old technology. So we moved to the new technology. Yes, reasonable investment, but it then turned into 32 seconds to back up what was taking 4.5 minutes. So for us, we can now snapshot our stuff. You can see one of them there. I think it took 16 seconds. There you go. Yeah. So it ran at 10:01, 10:01 and 16 seconds, or 17 seconds. I'll even give it the extra 0.9 on it. It was done and completed.
A quick question, Gary.
Yeah.
Was that parallel backup in both cases?
No, that's not parallel backup at all. That's
okay.
Full backup. That's full backup of the server. And I can tell you, I ran a new backup job to make sure it's a full backup, not an incremental, not a bit where it's doing, I can't remember the name of it now. When it's doing the like shadow versions of it, shadow copy versions of it that it does. It was a complete full machine, and it took about 4 seconds longer to do the full backup. I just created a brand new script and said, run the whole thing again. So it went from the start, and it makes a huge difference. I'm not even on 19 yet, so I can't do parallel backup. So I know that's coming for us as an upgrade. We've got to do that. So once we get parallel backups, I'm expecting it to go even quicker. One of our other servers was running. This is a weekly one. This is all of our, this is big. It's all our PDFs. So all our dockets that we produce from our warehouse that we send out to our customers. I have to back all the container data up, everything. At the moment, that used to take around about 30 minutes. Well, actually, no, it took 1 hour and 23 minutes. You can see at the bottom. So at 7 o'clock, it used to run on a Sunday. 8:23, it finished. Yeah. And you can see the one I highlighted, it's now taking around about 30 minutes. So 1 hour and a half to 30 minutes is huge. It's 3 times faster by having the hardware in. Now, as I say, we had the hardware. We put the hardware in for not just me to play around with. Or I would have loved to, but we had a whole business strategy that we had to change. But the benefit of getting newer hardware. Now, our old hardware was 6 years old. So it gives you an idea of the upgrade. They were state-of-the-art servers 6 years ago. We weren't running 10 gig iSCSI, and that's the thing I would say is the big difference. Getting that bandwidth to the disk is definitely the thing you want to do. So if you're running, this is where you get the advantage. You don't have the problem that I have, is the fact that if you go and can fit it all on a new Mac Mini, you're going to get the performance IO of probably that RAID that we've got internally, because the IO on that disk internally is super quick. So it's very, very fast. Whereas going to a RAID, you need the back end to actually communicate with those drives and make them work. So yeah, that was my little snippet of hardware matters. I wanted to give you, and it's a real world scenario where we are playing with stuff and realizing for the small amount of investment, if you can go to a brand new Mac Mini, you're going to give your clients a massive performance boost. And that's something you need to look at, I think. We're going to look at it from other solutions. I've got someone else that I'm working with where I'm doing some stuff, and I'm going to advise they want to possibly get into FileMaker. That's where they're going with it. They're looking to do cloud, but if cloud's not right for them, the on-prem, I'd only recommend decent speed disks is the key thing you want to focus on. I think that's the starting point. Obviously have enough CPU to run your functions that you want to, but that's easy to find. The disk speed is the challenge. But yeah, so I've had an array of stuff. I did the same thing for Click. I know this isn't a Click meeting, but I'll give you an idea with Click, and it did exactly the same. I threw 24 cores at Click, and it didn't make that much difference from the 6 or 8 that I had before. It's a bit more memory hungry than FileMaker, but just do your testing. Just test your limits of what you need, and only allocate what you really need, because you can over allocate and you don't get any benefit from it. But it's nice to play with thousands of pound servers. It's always good. So yeah, that's my point, and that's what I wanted to say. Get the right spec. Cool.
Great stuff. Anyone going to jump in there and ask questions about it? Sure, Gary, I'll handle them.
Can if you want, or wait
It's
until
just,
the virtual part. Sure, go.
Just one comment at the really low end of things, that if you're using parallel backups, you need to have a minimum of 4 cores, not 2 cores. It's kind of tucked away in the release notes. But
Do we know why that is? Do we know why that is? Is it just because it needs 2 cores to run and 2 cores to then function on its own, so it has to mirror it? I don't know.
I would imagine so, but I imagine Douglas could probably tell us better than I could.
So I was thinking.
Yeah, if you have just 2 CPUs, 2 cores, it doesn't run too well. So that's what we said for minimum. It can run on 2, but it's not ideal. So just to make everyone's life a lot easier, we just went for the 4 cores. And we were like, if people can't afford 4 cores for a server, then they might not use FileMaker server at all. So
does that still apply?
That's what I found when I sort of ran it on, installed it on Raspberry Pi.
Yeah,
which is a bit underpowered for that kind of thing, but I thought it was worth trying anyway.
Does that make a difference, Doug? If, as I'm saying, I'm monitoring my performance to see what CPU is. If I think I need 4 CPUs to run efficiently, if I put parallel backup, should I give it 6? I'm lucky enough I can allocate that. So my point are you saying if you can run your server on 4 and that's efficient, when parallel comes in, it won't have any detriment to the running of your server?
Yeah, so the idea is the more CPUs you give it, the quicker it's going to be. So having 4 basically will make sure that it will run really quickly to actually sort of do what it has to do without interfering with the read and write of actually what the SSD has to do. So the more CPUs you have, the quicker it's basically going to go through the process of actually doing what it has to do. Because it has to compare basically what's there before and what is new. So it has to be to the calculation side.
I'll do a test. I'll do a test and I'll give it 24 when I upgrade, and I'll tell you what it does. See how fast we can make it go.
I put in the chat a link to an updated page of what we did of the tech spec. Because we had a lot of requests from people saying, like before we're just saying, like you mentioned, we just say you need like a basic sort of like a full CPU, a full CPU and stuff like that. What we did basically was kind of a table. The software that we have for the KB is an ideal, where we can outline what we consider is a good, best, and better of every type of version of server you should be getting. So we did around, in terms of if you buy Apple product, what you should be getting, and then the equivalent on the Linux and Windows world, just to give some ideas of people what they should be buying. So obviously on the Mac, the minimum one is the Mac Mini. But if you can afford it, like the Studio is actually very cool for that, because it has some nice, like you're saying, the SSD on those on the Mac Studio actually better than the Mac Minis.
Yeah.
But the problem is you can't select them. I mean, on the Mac Mini you can have the good ones, the bad ones. On the Studio, I think both versions you have the good ones.
And the other thing as well is if you can upgrade, that's the advantage of like the Studio and the Mac Mini. The Mac Mini's sort of, I don't know where it's been pitched. I don't know what Apple's doing. It's a fabulous machine for what it costs compared to the Studio, because the Studio is a hefty cost. But as you said on there, if you can get the 10 gig backbone. And if you've got a network that can support the 10 gig backbone, put the server on 10 gig, you will get a huge benefit. So that's, and on the Mac Mini, I think it's a 150 quid or 200 quid add-on for the 10 gig Ethernet. So it's definitely worth having, providing your vendor or where you're putting it's got Cat 6. Got Cat 5, forget it, don't worry, there's no point. Cool.
And when we mentioned, so the one thing that we have still issues, because we had like people wanting to actually buy the all Mac Minis, and they didn't actually understand that even though it's recorded, I can say it now officially, but the all Mac Minis are very shitty hard disks. They're basically low end of what you can actually get on a laptop. So they weren't really good machines for serving anything. But the new ones, they're pretty cool now.
We had saying on our Mac Minis, we've got our various bots and we've used Mac Minis for years to do some of our bot tasks. And we've noticed since doing the upgrade on those and moving into M1s and going with decent SSDs in them, even those tasks run substantially faster. And you think, oh, I've got this machine laying around, I can just use it. There's a point, yeah, you can use it, but those functions are going to run really slow. If you've got no speed essence that you need and you need things to turn around really quickly, fine, use them. It's not a problem. They will function. But we ended up putting 4 or 5 bots in, and then we were just going, right, okay, we don't need the 4 or 5 bots. We can get down to 1 or 2, because if you get the faster hard drives and the faster CPUs, everything just finishes so much quicker. So it's definitely worth the investment.
So
Cool.
I may add, FileMaker server is composed of maybe 5-6 applications running. Each application runs on a CPU core, of course, has several threads. So I would expect if you use 24 cores, it can't use them, basically. Because you would need to run maybe something like 20 perform script on server scripts, which do work all the time to use all the CPU cores. So for most people, I would expect with 4 or 8 cores, they're more as happy.
The only thing I'd say with that is I'm not sure how this works, is the fact that FileMaker 19 now does client-sided sorts if the CPU is available. So it can do finds, it can do functions for the client if you've got 19 on the front end and the back end. So I don't know what would happen in that scenario, Christian, if you had 100 users hitting it and they all went to do finds and sorts. Could the server pick that, or does that come under the one core engine?
If I remember correctly, on the specs, it said something, if the usage on the server is below a threshold and the work can be performed on the server, then it will do it on the server. But if the server is too busy, it will not do it there.
The threshold is 25%. So anything below 25% will do everything on the server. Above 25, it will actually do on the client, the old way.
Right.
So, hey, riffing off what Christian said about the server being split over the years, it's been split. So I guess it's up to 5 separate applications. And picking up what Gary said earlier about his machine, 24 CPUs, each of which has 2 cores. So my question is, would the software allocate first across CPUs? Like, just to take Gary's example.
No, this is all dynamically. I mean, you have the server process, you have the scripting process, you have the data API process, you have the web process.
Right. 5 different independent applications.
Yeah, and each is scheduled on all the available cores as needed. And every app has several threads running, but most of the threads are sleeping, basically, and waiting for work.
Okay, cores and threads. What about CPUs? Because Gary said he's got 24 CPUs. And I don't know if it's still Grand Central Dispatch that handles that.
I
got 2 CPUs, 24 cores on each CPU.
Oh,
so
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So, and they can multi-thread as well. So it's basically 96 threads if I wanted to run it.
All right. So then it doesn't matter.
I don't know why you'd want that. You wouldn't want that, but.
Well, all right. And if it's 24 cores in any one of the 2, then it wouldn't really matter. At that point, it just becomes intellectual curiosity how it allocates across CPUs, if it does CPUs and then cores, but it doesn't matter. So, Christian, what you're saying is if the FileMaker server app has 5 different apps, then 6 or more cores, you'd be able to take advantage, but beyond that, it doesn't help. Yeah, if I understand you correctly.
Yeah, well, it depends on what you do. If you run 10 scripts with perform script and so at the same time.
The PSOS is gonna go on to different.
And the same is if you use WebDirect a lot and you have 20 people connected, you run 20 client processes on the server for them, and those needs go, of course. But I would expect that most people with a small business doing the invoicing, they will be very happy with 8 cores, and even Gary may just run virtual machines there. So he could just put in 5 FileMaker servers on this machine with separate as virtual machines and give each virtual machine maybe 8 cores. And
that's exactly what I do, Christian. It's exactly that. To answer your thing, Tony, as well, the way the servers are set up in VMware, you would the faster channel route as well is the CPUs have a channel route to certain controllers across the board. So you wouldn't want your FileMaker server running across 2 CPUs. You'd run on 1 CPU multi-threaded. It's faster because the dynamic of the hardware will allow the channel of communication to the I/O and so forth from the one core. So invariably, it's usually single CPU. Take as many cores of that CPU allocated to that VM. That's the faster way of doing it.
So
Yeah,
this was all helpful answers between everybody. Oh, Christian, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
I just said the operation system usually does it automatically for you. Like the
Right,
same
right.
on macOS. If you have an M2 chip, I think it's 2 blocks of 4 cores for the high efficiency or something like that.
Yeah.
So those CPUs, those cores are grouped together, and same group uses same cache. So you want to stay on the same group if possible.
Okay, very cool. And let me, I don't know if I missed this because I was multitasking, writing something up about the engineering blog, which come later. I have a question follow up on that. The biggest traffic servers that we're touching, we're getting a lot of mileage. I think this is sort of still classic advice of putting the operating system on one SSD, putting the data files on a different SSD. So we're still doing that. Anyway, helpful conversation. Thank you all.
You're welcome. It's fine. Over to you, Jul.
Right. Okay. Excellent. Thank you. As everyone said, I thought it was really interesting stuff. Thanks, Gary, for sharing all that, and for everyone else for the additional information. Next up, I've got Ara on the agenda. If you're ready there, Ara.
Yeah, all good.
This has an interesting ODBC issue, which I will leave you to share with the group.
Evening, chaps. Right, so going back to Gary's very first slide, you know, you had the Mac Mini, and then you had the cloud, and you had the Dell bit in the middle.
Yeah.
That's where I live. All of my customers live in that little Dell bit, right? So I deal solely with Sage victims, guys who use Sage, okay? And what I've done is I've focused on the guys who've been left behind, the ones who use servers, the ones who don't use Xero, who don't use QuickBooks, who don't use cloud services, but are too big for that. So they've got basically a server, they've got a database, and they've integrated with a whole lot of other bits and pieces. And what I do is I provide them with the plug. I'm an SBA, joined FileMaker about 10 years ago by mistake, and I've been stuck around since, and I love it. So here's where the scenario is. So we have an umbrella set of products called Mobile to Sage, and basically we've been using the FileMaker infrastructure to take Sage functionality on the road. So sales guys on the road, delivery guys on the road, that kind of stuff. Since FileMaker version 13, FileMaker server has been able to read data via ODBC. Now, imagine being in an accounts department. These guys work in Excel. That's what they do. So they get data in Excel using ODBC from their various different applications, Sage being one of them, SQL Server, Access databases, and so on. And then they do all their stuff in Excel. So I always piggyback that, because you go into a Windows environment and say, I've got Mac and what have you, alarm bell starts ringing all over the place. So I only do stuff for operational systems. I don't tell them what's behind. It's a black box scenario. Now, it all went well with 13, 14, 15, 16, all the way up to the current version. So I have got version 28 of Sage, became version 29. So I've got FileMaker reading all the ODBC stuff. So I'm going to share my screen here, and this is the thing that I sent off. So this is the video that I sent to So this is the problem. Sage is sitting there with version 28. I've got FileMaker 19 sitting there. It reads the data and passes it back to server. 28 is fine. So Sage says, oh, I've now got version 29. So the Sage user goes upgrade to version 29. So the only thing that has changed on that box is going from 28 to 29. Now, the way Sage works is each one of these versions has got its own ODBC drivers. So there's a version 28, there's a version 29. They used to be 32 and 64, but they're now all going down the 64 route. So I might now just run that. Now, the way Sage do this is they confirm the damn thing is working with Microsoft Office tools, Excel being the predominant one. Okay, so on this particular box, I've got version 28 of Sage set up, and I've got version 29 of Sage set up. So with version 28 in Excel, I go in there and it then accesses the data with a username and password. And it then goes through and says, right, I have access to these tables. What do you want to talk about? So in this particular case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and get some sales ledger stuff, which is list of customers, which is absolutely critical for doing invoicing kind of stuff. So off it goes, version 28 out of Excel. Thank you very much. Happy days. Data goes into Sage, sorry, into Excel. That's V28, big tick. Then we'll do exactly the same thing again with Excel, but this time I'm going to go and use the version 29 drivers. So there's version 29, again 64-bit, off it goes, same username, same password. Thank you very much. You say okay to that. And Excel says, hunky-dory, no problems. And it goes and brings out the customer data. Now, up until version 29 of Sage, FileMaker didn't have any problems at all. It used the same ODBC driver in the same way with the username and password. Now, imagine my shock when I was just doing a ticking bashing exercise before releasing this to hundreds of users. And here's version 29. And off I go. I'm going to do an ODBC using the same ODBC driver, which is that one, 28, same username, same password. I cheer from the clouds. All is good. I can select customer name and it brings it into FileMaker. And my customers on the road can use it. Brilliant. Okay, 146 of them. Thank you. So now what I do is I'm going to do exactly the same ruddy thing with version 29. And the computer says,
we all know where this is going.
Yeah,
not going to end well. It's
Yeah,
going to be tears. There you go. So I reported that to FileMaker and they said, not sure about that. So I reported it to Sage and they said, I don't know about that. And no one's taken ownership on it. Now, the challenge we have here is we've got enough of a problem trying to sell Apple-based solutions into the Windows world. With this one, we've now completely stuffed it. Because if these guys can't use ODBC to get their data out, I can't use FileMaker as an integration tool. And it is a godsend in this environment. We are the one-eyed man in the land of the blind. So, having been stuck with this particular challenge, a few years ago, one of the things we noted was some of these customers are big customers, right? Sage 50 premise customers are big customers. They've got thousands and thousands of records. So we found that ODBC had other challenges. The main challenges being, I'll just stop that now. The main challenges being that the volumes, if you've got large volumes, because Sage 50 in particular, 200 and 500 have got SQL Server. So we use that ESS to get to that. That's not a problem. But with Sage 50, where you've got basically a folder with a whole load of data and IDX files in it, you hit a bottleneck, a bit like your CPU bottleneck in terms of how fast you can get onto the M25 and get off the M25. So being developers, what we did was we produced a product called the Sage Data Exporter. It is designed to be a shit off a shovel, right? And it goes off and it pumps stuff out at a rate of knots without any of the bells and whistles of ODBC. So what we've now did was we released a product called FileMaker to Sage to the community, I don't know, 5 to 6 years ago, whatever the hell it was. And that was designed to be from FileMaker to Sage. So we got solutions out there that take this plugin, if you like, and they basically do all their stuff in FileMaker. We give them a set of scripts and a few tables. They populate that with invoices, customers, supplies, purchase orders, whatever the hell it is. And they press this magic script button and it pumps it from FileMaker into Sage. And they were populating their applications using ODBC. So what we've now done is we've enhanced the FileMaker to Sage to now work in both directions. So we've got this other product called Sage Data Exporter. Here it is in action. And what Sage Data Exporter does is it goes through all of the tables that Sage has got and produces the data out in different formats. And the one that we like, that we really, really like, is JSON. So what this then does is it goes through, and some of the data that I've, some of the performance things that I've measured, it can, I think, exported about 14,000 records in about 8 seconds kind of stuff in JSON across about 30 different tables. So when this works is on the FileMakers, on the Sage solution, we put Sage Data Exporter. It gets executed from an on event from FileMaker. And in the background, it just pumps out all the data in JSON format. and we then pick that up. And we've now rolled this into the FileMaker to Sage community to give people who need data out of Sage, as well as going into Sage, that ability. And in the background, then what you've got is you've got all of the JSON things here. So for example, if I go to, I don't know.
Oh, Rob, we can't see your screen, mate.
Why can't you see my screen?
I can only see the Sage ODBC screen.
Can you?
Yeah, need to drag it over a bit more, I think.
No, it's a different screenshot. Hang on, I'll stop sharing this one. One moment, caller. It's the way Zoom works. Let's go to the other one. I've got multiple sessions. Here you go. Have you got that?
Yep, perfect.
Good. Okay, sorry. I work in a data center, so I've got multiple virtual machines running around.
Yeah, that's fine. It's fine.
Okay, so here we are. So basically what this does, the Sage data exporter runs from a batch file. So FileMaker kicks this thing off. It says, do you know what? I'm going to need some department codes, customer codes, supplier codes, whatever the hell it is. And it goes off and it then goes through all the tables and produces CSV, JSON, XML, XLS, blah, 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 blah. But the one that I'm interested in for FileMaker is JSON. So when you run this, it does, in this particular case, it took about 25 seconds. But the statistics that I've got are about 14,000 records in about 8, as opposed to doing it in ODBC and Excel, which took minutes. So in the background, then I've got the JSON, and these JSON files are the JSON files that I would then bring into FileMaker. So this is what's been rolled into FileMaker to Sage. So it now works in both directions for people who need to get data out of Sage. But unfortunately, I had to go down that route and bundle it in because I couldn't get a fix from FileMaker or Sage. So I thought I'd just bring that to people's attention, because I don't know how many people this affects, but this affects every single one of my sites that I have currently and all the ones going into the future. It's ugly.
It is. I'm glad you found a solution though.
Well, it was only because we were a software developer.
Yeah.
Right. So the only other option would be to manually run these from within Sage. Sage 50 has no automation. So you can't say run this report every 10 minutes. You can't kick it off from an external thingamajig, batch file or anything. So we had to produce a particular tool that just bypassed all of the front end UI and just went through the back end with the development kit and just sucked the stuff out. It's the reverse of what we've always been doing in terms of pushing it back in. But yeah, it's an ugly one. So just be conscious of that. So if you've got any Sage 50 users who want to go up to version 29, Armageddon will follow. Just have something up your sleeve.
Interesting.
And that was it.
I want to chip in, Ara. I use ODBC all the time. I use it from FileMaker into Click and vice versa. So I've got Click, and Click's our full analytical pack. So we're moving millions of records. So every night we're doing like 200-300 million records. So we do that either through SQL, some through FileMaker. I've got about 1-2 million records coming in from FileMaker every night. We use ODBC for that. I've done demos on using, you can hit the API and do it via FileMaker API. That's another way you can do it and get stuff out of there. So my concern is I've had some issues, certainly with ODBC connections, with Apple releasing newer versions of the OS. That's caused me major problems. We had certainly had an issue when we moved to the M processor. That caused a problem. Similar thing. That was a nightmare. Any of our M processors for our bot processors had a completely different setup for the DSNs for ODBC to work. I don't know why, because we're the same thing. We're just using the same driver that should work, and it just changed. Yes, I get the M processor one because it's a different architecture. I understand that. You're going from Intel to an ARM sort of binary. So that makes some sense to me, but everything we tested was like, yes, that will work, that will work. And we're connected to the same back-end SQL server. So nothing had changed. So you've got a solution for that by running a scripted tool. However, are you right in saying then you have to schedule everything, or what you're doing with your farm? So if there was a button on the saying update my customer table, normally you would just script that and go ODBC connection, bring it in, import, dedupe, do what you need to do, clear out the table, well, however you'd run your script. Now you've got to go run a batch process that gets a JSON file for you to then pick up later. It's not native. No. Okay.
No, it isn't. So here we go. Now, bearing in mind the guys that are using our solution have an admin console, as I call it. An admin console is FMP, FileMaker Pro, sitting there on the same PC. Here's my PC. I've got Sage at the bottom, and I've got FileMaker on the bottom.
Yeah.
Okay, so the PC holds the Sage application, which has got all the DLLs in it. It's got all the Sage data on it, which might be on a network drive, but let's leave that for a minute. And it has got, so what it does is when you do the ODBC, the FileMaker says, go to the Sage folder, pick up the customer record, suck it into this table. One hit from one script.
One hit. Yep.
Now, interesting thing is I've been doing that for 10 years. And the interesting question that I had was, if FileMaker is saying my software is ODBC compliant, and I produce a piece of software like Sage, which is, it's not a small piece of software. There are 400,000 customers in the UK using this particular version. Yep. And here it is working with Excel. I would have hoped that they would have said, you know what, I'm probably not putting my username and password thing in the way it should be. I'll go and have a look at that and I'll get that fixed. That's not the response I got from them, unfortunately. Now, if it didn't work in Excel, then I'd put hands up and say, you know what, Sage have screwed up.
Yeah.
But so every cloud has a silver lining, though. So in your scenario, I want new customers. And I was working with one today that has 9,000 customers. Press the button, ODBC, off it goes, have a cup of tea. 3-4 minutes later, you've got them.
Yeah.
Scenario 1, which has been going on since 2013. Scenario 2, with my script, I can get the same 9,000 out in 4 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
So even if I do the JSON and the load, it still comes in under the header. Now, as far as the user's concerned, he's blind as a bat. It's black box stuff. I don't tell him how it works, right? Yeah. It's black magic. You press that button and the customers appear. Furthermore, what I've now done is I've done it such that the PC locally produces these JSON files, right? Those then get put into containers, which are on the server, right? The containers on the server. So I dump the JSON into a container and I do all the loading using PSOS.
Yeah.
So it's even quicker. So out of this Armageddon, I've managed to come up with
something way better.
Something might be way better. The downside to that is I'm going to have to redo all the coding, right? So the magic button has now become a magic button local batch container upload, PSOS, update table, and bring it back so the guy can see what the hell he actually pressed that one button for.
Yeah.
But the disappointing thing here is, if it doesn't work for FileMaker, how many other applications won't be able to use that? Or if FileMaker uses this ODBC in this particular fashion, what other things can break further down that people are expecting FileMaker to use ODBC with? And that's a challenge. And nobody wanted to own it. But I thought I'd just bring it to people's attentions because other people have been using this stuff and they've approached me for it. I wasn't quite sure what form to use. So I asked Jul, and Jul said, you know what, tell you what, I'll give you 5 minutes slots just to let people know, so at least people are aware of it. But if anybody else has got any ideas that I've missed, hey, I'm all ears.
One thing I will say, I haven't got anything you've missed. I think it's just the nature of progression, and I think it's stung you hard. I think there's one thing that, from a test point of view, is are you able to test other solutions that use ODBC to your Sage data? Have you got anything else that you would push towards it or not?
All of them work.
Everything else that works.
Everything else
so
works.
You're just saying FileMaker and ODBC doesn't work. That's
correct.
It.
That's the worst part of it.
I'm not putting you on the spot, Doug. I'm not putting you on the spot, Doug. You got anything to answer to this or not? Because if it's just Claris and FileMaker that's not working, that's a bit weird. So.
A quick Google search suggests that other people have been having trouble with the Sage drivers as well after the upgrade. So it may not just be FileMaker.
Oh, that's interesting. Go on then.
Well, I mean, that's just like a very quick 10-second Google search. It did show up people asking questions on the Sage forum about why is this not working.
Oh, that's right. Okay. That could be us. But there are two other things that Sage shadow things with. Sage 50, right? There's UK version of Sage 50. There's Irish version of Sage 50.
Yeah.
There's the Canadian version of Sage 50 and the Northern American version of Sage 50, both of which are Peachtree. They've got nothing to do with the UK version, but all of those come as Sage 50. So some of the things that I've looked at, I've gone through to Sage technical support. I've got it escalated to the highest level possible. The coders are looking at the ruddy thing, but they're saying, look, put it into Excel. Even your video shows it's working. The issue is the only thing that has changed is the Sage ODBC driver, but the FileMaker just doesn't utilize that ODBC driver with a username and password. It just comes back and says, do you know what? I'm not going to let you in. So it has to be the way that the FileMaker is using the authentication on that driver, or the way it has historically done it and got away with it.
Or it's the fact that FileMaker is now supporting something like TLS or some other high level of security. That's what I'm thinking.
Change the version of TLS or something.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, they've gone to a higher level of TLS and Sage doesn't know about it.
So the error is actually not within FileMaker, it's within the ODBC manager. That's the one thing that we do know. All I can say, it's in our backlog of stuff that we're looking at. We just haven't got the time for the time being. We haven't got the time to actually look deeply into it for the time being, honestly.
I wouldn't expect you to do anything else, right? I am just a little pimple on the UK end of FileMaker, right? The only thing here is you would not believe what a gem FileMaker is, right? In that little Dell world,
yeah,
it is the glue. It's the plug between, you know, light, which is the Mac end, and darkness, which is all the Windows stuff. And when I put this in front of people, they bite my arm off. And at the moment, I'm having to jump through an awful lot of hoops just to get hold of the data. I've got away with it for 10 years. I have to say, hands up. Yeah, I've milked it. But imagine my surprise when for the 11th time, I've come through and said, you know, it's Sunday night. I'm going to upgrade everybody tomorrow. Let me try it with version 29 that was released on Friday. Tick, 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 Armageddon. I'm thinking, well, clearly I've done it wrong. So I go to a second machine, completely fresh install. Next, Armageddon. And I'm thinking, now I've got hot flashes, right? I'm getting a little bit sweaty under the collar. It's Sunday night, and I'm thinking, all hell's going to break loose tomorrow. So, you know, I was just a little bit concerned because I now don't have confidence in what will happen next year.
Yeah.
What else is going to break?
Doug, I was wondering if you're able to give us any insight on the Claris's long-term view of the use of ODBC.
So we're still supporting. I mean, we're putting more effort on the OData side because potentially this is what is going to drive more usage across the globe. I think ODBC is still there, very much in place. You know, like saying like Sage and other sort of stuff around the planet. We're not stopping it. We are. So we've got the company Actual Technologies that she sort of do some of the stuff with her, Jonathan Monroe, but she works on a lot of the stuff for the ODBC. Still working on it. The one thing is basically for the time being is because we're trying to actually sort of fix a lot of other bugs more on the WebDirect side. We haven't basically put more effort on ODBC in terms of just QA and stuff like that to be able to actually test everything around. So it's kind of in the backlog of stuff that we were to work on. It's just we haven't got the time to be able to actually do it for the time being. But it's definitely in my list of stuff to be looked at. So it's not gone and forgotten. It's just we need the manpower to be able to actually test everything and see where the issue is coming from, whether it's our end, whether there's stuff that we need to change. So it takes a bit of time.
That's fair enough, and I wouldn't expect anything else. Now, the one thing that you might want to be interested in is that FileMaker does produce its own ODBC drivers, right? So what I've been doing historically is using FileMaker as let's call it a data repository. So most of these guys have got Amazon, I've got eBay, they've got Shopify, they've got their website, they've got their manufacturing systems, accounting systems, blah, 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 blah. And all of those sit in little silos. And, you know, Gary uses Click to get all of that stuff together. In certain scenarios, what happens is they want to get the stuff together, they want to cobble it up together, but they don't want to report on it in a particular way. They just love their Excel because they've got it on their desktop and it's easy. Now, so what I've been doing in some sites is I've been using FileMaker for that aggregation. So I've used APIs to go and get stuff from here and there and everywhere else, sticking it on a FMP12 file in my data center on FileMaker server. And guess what? The FileMaker ODBC drivers that are installed on the PC are then going across the net to my FMP12 file and bringing that data into Excel. And that has been a godsend for quite a lot of these users. And again, that's undersold. So my concern at the moment is that, do you know what? The core stuff's great. And the reason I focus on the accounting side is because guess what? They've got the checkbook. Right? So if I can solve their problem, they can't sign the check quick enough. Yeah. I don't care how it's done, as long as it's done. But this ODBC is a massive fly in the ointment, and it has caused me. I had curly black hair. I don't have that anymore. That was 2 weeks ago, right? And I'm just concerned that if this stuff isn't going to be fixed, I'm going to have challenges going ahead in years to come, because I won't be able to, as I've done for the last 10 years, confirm that the investment that I've already made in the platform is something that I can pull forward.
Yeah, so we're not giving up on, I mean, we're trying to do like everything is, we're trying to do everything at the same time. So we're putting more effort on the data. So we've got compliance for 4.01 coming out soon, because there's already requests for that. At the same time, putting more effort on the data API. So we're trying to actually get it, because we know that, like in some countries, they're moving away from ODBC to data APIs. So we're trying to get everything to actually sort of be updated at the same time. And then there's so many variation. It's basically QA's work that's basically taking a hit for that, because we have to test against everything. So the more variation there is of when we're doing stuff, the more work it is on our end to actually sort of test it and see where the problem could be coming from. So
it's an opportunity. So I've now aired it, but if anybody else needs anything, give us a shout. I'm more than happy to help out, because I'm having to solve these particular issues. I'm just hoping there'll be version 2019 point whatever the hell it is. There'll be a new ODBC driver and it will go away, or Sage will bring out a service pack and it will go away. But this thing's just a ticking time bomb at the moment, and I'm getting calls every day. I had another one today. Do you know that email you sent me a few weeks ago to say not to upgrade to version 29? Can I upgrade now? I'm having to put everybody off, right? Anyway, so I will look forward to some positive news from some direction at some time. But thank you for the platform, Jul.
Have you got the ODBC tracing log on?
Yeah, got all of that on, and I've sent all of those things through.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just says, do you know what? I don't want to play. Same username, same password, nothing's different. But the way that you're calling the username and password, something changed. But I'm not convinced it's TLS, right? Because the Sage version is local, just data and IDX files. It's not got any other security apart from username and passwords. And it works on version 28. They tell that hasn't changed. You know, Sage is really noddy. The version that I'm using, right? So the strategy that I've got is the customer pays bugger all for this version of Sage, like a few £1,000s, and then he spends 5-10 times that with my solution set. Whereas Sage 200, which uses a SQL Server, it will cost him £20,000 to £50,000, and he's got a proper SQL Server, and I use ESS, and I don't have any of those problems there. But the problem is, at that top end, there are probably 20,000 customers. At this end, there are 400,000 customers.
Yeah, and
that's UK, and I get 20% of my inquiries from the US. I haven't even got time to look at them. So I guess this is the tip of the iceberg. But I'm just bringing it to your attention in case there are other people who are using that, and the core call to the ODBC is going to blow up in other territories. Thank you for your time, gents.
if I find a solution, I'll come back to you.
Hey, I'll buy you beers, multiple beers.
Thanks for presenting that, Ara. That's
all yours, sir. I'll stop sharing. All yours.
Great, fantastic. Can I just take this opportunity to welcome Andrew, who's joined us over there? I see. Probably very bleary-eyed, because I think it's horrendously early in Sydney, isn't it?
7:15, so not too bad, but haven't had a coffee yet.
Okay, I mean, do you want to jump in and talk now, or do you want us to chat for a bit? So you're scheduled for 15 minutes time. It's entirely up to you.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in if that works for you.
Yeah, I think that works for everyone. Yeah. So, yeah, I'll let you introduce. Well, a brief introduction for anyone who doesn't know. Andrew is basically Data Buzz, as far as I can tell, and produces some fantastic connectors to various programs and FileMaker, and they work wonderfully, having used some of them. He's going to talk about his latest one.
Great. Okay, I'll just share my screen. Okay, excellent. So sorry, you're gonna have to look at the side of my head for a bit. So yeah, I just wanted to give a brief introduction first. But I just want to mention I was actually in Brighton about 6 months ago, and was actually hoping to come to one of your meetings in person. So here's my classic tourist photos of Brighton. So I had a good time. I was there for about a week.
I recognise
the exhibition and a few other things. So I do feel like I have a spiritual and personal connection with you folks over there in Brighton. So yeah, I'm the owner of DataBuzz. We're a Claris partner down here in Sydney, Australia. I've got a couple of people working for me, but it's a very small FileMaker consultancy. I've been developing in FileMaker for over 30 years now, so feeling very old at this point. I've been a FileMaker certified developer, and I've had a long-standing interest in integration. So that's led to, over time, my business has developed a number of solutions. And initially, a lot of them were just for internal use. So I built a connector for Xero because our business jumped from MYB to Xero a number of years ago, and I didn't want to be doing any double data entry. And then I built a connector for WooCommerce because we sold things on a WooCommerce store, and I didn't want to be manually keying those orders in. And a lot of the other ones have been sort of driven by customers that have contacted us over the years. So we had a real estate agent once who said, "Oh, it'd be great if I could send an SMS." This is about 25 years ago. He said, "Oh, it'd be great if I could send an SMS to all the people on my database about all the open homes coming up on the weekend," because he'd spend Friday afternoon playing telephone tag and calling them, and they'll call him back, and it was very inefficient. So that led to the development of a way to send SMS messages from FileMaker. And most recently, we did one for DocuSign, so you could send agreements out from FileMaker and download the completed PDFs. But I'm here today to talk about QuickBooks and integrating FileMaker with the QuickBooks Online in particular. So for those who aren't familiar with the QuickBooks platform, it's been around for quite a long time now. It's about 40 years old. Started in North America. They're all about helping small businesses sort of manage their books. Initially, they had a desktop version that you ran on a Mac or a PC. And in that 40 years, they've now got over 100 million customers with a number of different products, QuickBooks being one of them. So they have their QuickBooks Desktop and their QuickBooks Online. The solution I'm going to talk about today is about integrating with QuickBooks Online. And yeah, in the last financial year, they had over 7 million online paying customers, including just under 6 million in the QuickBooks Online subscribers. So it's a big business, bigger than any of the other cloud accounting platforms that I'm aware of, like Xero. And yeah, they turn over a lot of data. So in the last financial year, they processed over 2 trillion in invoices. So it's a lot of data going through the QuickBooks platform. And they are available in the UK. In fact, our very first customer of our QuickBooks integration is a UK-based business. So yeah, the fmAccounting link, QuickBooks Online Edition solutions, bit of a mouthful. It joins our other accounting integration products for Xero and MYB, which is for Australian, New Zealand customers, whereas Xero is global and QuickBooks Online is global. And like all our other solutions, it shows you how you can connect FileMaker to QuickBooks Online and upload and download data between them. So it's about automating workflows and eliminating double data entry. It's a standalone solution. So it has lots of examples. So the main one is obviously for how do you authenticate. And then we have examples for uploading and downloading customers, invoices, estimates, vendors, bills, purchase orders, and more. It's designed to connect to a single QuickBooks Online company. We've got a number of different licenses, company, vertical, developer, and so on. You can get a fully functioning trial version off our website for 2 weeks. And like all our other solutions, it's completely unlocked. So you can integrate it in whichever way you see fit. And that might involve using our file and connecting it to an existing FileMaker solution, or embedding bits of our solution in your existing FileMaker solution. So it's entirely up to you. There's pros and cons to all sort of FileMaker integration approaches. We have a few guides on our website that sort of guide you through the high level approaches to these. So I'm just going to jump into some demos now. That's the end of my slides. But if you want to connect with us, that's our Twitter, Facebook handles, and our website where you can subscribe to our blog or our newsletter as well. Okay, so that's the end of the slides. So here's our fmAccounting link solution. It's got the same look and feel as all our other solutions. So it's designed to be picked apart, pulled apart, and to not sort of overload you with sort of too much sort of interface things going on. So the first thing we want to do is authenticate. I've already authenticated and downloaded some data just to save a bit of time, but we'll go through the authentication process again just to show you how that works. It only takes a minute or two. So we click the authenticate button and we get a FileMaker web viewer in a card window, and we just need to sign into our insured accounts. Now, our solution lets you toggle over here between the sandbox and the live production environment. So I'm going to use the sandbox, which is a free development environment. You can create up to 10 sandbox companies for different regions. So I'm going to use the one I created for the UK region. So if you've got more than one company, you just choose your company. So I'll choose the Great Britain one and go next. And it knows I've already connected. So it takes me to my redirect URL, and then I just hit continue. And that goes and exchanges the code I get from QuickBooks for token, and I get a refresh token. So I'm all authenticated. I have my access token here. I know it expires in 100 minutes, I think it is. Or 10 minutes, whatever. Sorry, I can't work it out. An hour, sorry. And then I get my refresh token, and that expires in 100 days, sorry. So as long as I'm using this at least once every 100 days, those tokens will just automatically refresh themselves. The realm ID is my unique sort of company ID. And here's where you can toggle between the sandbox and the production environment. So I'm all authenticated. At this point, I'd normally go and pull down my company details. I've already done that just to save a bit of time, but over on the setup screen, I can show you what I've downloaded. I've downloaded my chart of accounts. I've downloaded my tax rates and my tax codes, my payment terms, classes if I have any, and departments if I have any, these are often called locations, currencies if I'm doing multi-currency work, and customer types if I've set those up in QuickBooks Online, and my payment methods. I've also got my QuickBooks preferences, which control a few things around custom fields and tax preferences and sales terms. And then on the general tab, I've gone and pulled down all my customers, all my products, all my sales items, so invoices, invoice payments, estimates, vendors, and finally purchases, which is bills, bill payments, and purchase orders. So I've actually pulled down all my data from my sandbox company into FileMaker. So if we're going to have a look at, say, products, we'll just jump into our products table. I've pulled down 25 products, and I can go into each of these. And you'll see everything has a QuickBooks ID, and that's their unique identifier. So that's how they uniquely identify their record. And when we upload something, if we include that QuickBooks ID, that's telling QuickBooks, go and update that record and don't create a new record. So here's a record with a price. So say I wanted to change the price from $500 up to $600, and these are in dollars, unfortunately. FileMaker obviously doesn't let us dynamically change the currency format. So They should be in pounds if it was a British company. So just pretend everything's in pounds, please. So I can change the details in FileMaker, and then I can click the push to QuickBooks button for the current record, and that's been uploaded to QuickBooks within a second or two. So I can make changes in FileMaker and make them once, and also update them in QuickBooks without having to go to QuickBooks and update them manually a second time. So let's jump over to customers. I'm going to go and create a new customer, and we'll call this trading company. Okay, and I'll just make that the same for my display name, and that's sort of all I need. I think at this point I'll just make it taxable to upload to QuickBooks, hopefully. So that's now in QuickBooks. So if I click my Open Customer in QuickBooks button, I'm already logged into that same company over in my web browser. And here's the company here. So there's not much information. But so I did add some information in QuickBooks. I'm going to just make up an email address. Okay. And I might put in a mobile number. And we'll click save. Okay, so I wanted to get those changes back into FileMaker. Now that I've got my QuickBooks ID, I can just click Update Custom from QuickBooks, and that's going to pull down any changes that I made in QuickBooks back into FileMaker. So it's obviously bi-directional. You can push data and pull data from FileMaker to QuickBooks. So over time, if I make any further changes, such as filling in the addresses and other contact details, I can just click a button and push that up to QuickBooks. For those that are familiar with QuickBooks, they let you have sort of sub-customers. So I can turn this into a sub-customer by choosing a parent customer, or you'll flag that it was a job or a project, which could be a job or a project related to a parent customer as well. We also support pulling down notes and uploading notes for the customer from QuickBooks, and the same for file attachments. I can download any file attachments for the customer, or I can create new ones and upload them to the customer. And you'll see some of the drop-down menus are now driven by data that I've already downloaded from QuickBooks. So these are all my payment methods that are downloaded behind the scenes. These are the currencies that I've downloaded, and so on. And same for customer types, although we haven't created any of those in QuickBooks yet. So that's my customer. So the next thing I might want to do is go and create an invoice. And this is the sort of the bread and butter we find most customers that want to integrate with Xero or QuickBooks. Generally, they're wanting to upload contacts, which could be suppliers or vendors and suppliers and customers, and invoices, and maybe invoice payments. They're the sort of the core things that most customers need to do, and then they might need to upload bills and purchase orders and a few other things. But yeah, most customers are using FileMaker to run the business and generate invoices, send them out, but they need to get that data into their accounting platform, and they don't want to be entering it twice. So I've got my invoice. So I'm going to go and add a few line items. And once again, these line items are coming from those products that I've already downloaded from QuickBooks. So it knows which IDs and everything to use. So I'm going to do some name badges and pens. I'll just change some of these quantities. And for each of these line items, they default to the product tax code. So VAT 20% in this case. But I can modify these on a line item basis. So I can indicate whether each line item is taxable and what the tax rate is, and so on. So I think I've got everything I need at this point. So I'm just going to go and push that up to QuickBooks. And that was uploaded successfully. So let's go and have a look in QuickBooks. And I should mention, I didn't calculate any tax. I got QuickBooks to do that for us. So I just said these two items are taxable. It's worked out the tax for us, and I've just populated that when I've uploaded it to QuickBooks. And we can see over here on the right, it's got my two line items, the total $470, and it's got my tax. It's $94, and the total $564. So all those changes have come across successfully. they do support things like custom fields. So that's a custom field. So if someone did put something into that invoice in QuickBooks and save it, I can then go and update that invoice from QuickBooks, and once again pull down the latest version of that invoice from QuickBooks, and there's my custom field there. So once again, I can also create notes and upload those, and I can create attachments and upload those, and QuickBooks let you send attachments to the emails that you send from QuickBooks, and I can email that invoice from QuickBooks from here as well. And down the track, you might get a payment, and you might be entering those payments in FileMaker, so you know in FileMaker whether that invoice has been paid. If I just quickly, actually, I'll just go and quickly add a payment, sorry, and I'm going to choose which deposit account to put this into. Choose current. So it was a check. There's the check number, and it could be a part payment or a full payment. We'll just do $200, and we'll just upload that. And that's been uploaded. So now if I go and just refresh this invoice in QuickBooks Online, we should see up here that the balance is now £364, and there was one payment, which if we click on, we can see the payment made of £200, and there's my receipt number. So that's how you can enter a invoice payment in FileMaker and upload it to QuickBooks without having to do any of that double data entry. And if I jump back to the customer, and I just want to check their balances, I can just go update balance from QuickBooks, and somewhere here is a field that has their balance. Gosh, where did I put it? No, I think I've hidden it. Just make a note of that, sorry. Yeah, I think I've taken that field off this slide for some silly reason. But okay, there it is there. That's the current balance in QuickBooks. Now I'll do it just a demonstration of bills. Estimates are basically quotes. So it's a quote that you might give a customer before you create an invoice. That works exactly the same as invoices. Vendors are suppliers. They're sort of kept separate to customers. So we're going into one of our vendors here, and once again, I'll go and create a new bill. QuickBooks have a couple of different ways of adding items. You can add what I call category details or item details. So I'll just add a category, and I'll put in, say, some subscriptions, magazines, tax, and we'll choose our tax rates. I'll do 20%. And if this was billable, I could say it was billable and who the customer it's billable to. And once again, I can set my sales terms and add any classes or departments and so on. So I could add as many line items as I like. I'll just go and push that bill to QuickBooks. And got an error message. There we go. Okay, so I've chosen the invalid chart of accounts. So let's see if I can find a better one. Let's try equipment rental. So I haven't tested this with a UK company before, so sometimes you've got to set up a few of these things behind the scenes. I'll try that one. Okay, so I haven't set up my chart of accounts quickly for bills, unfortunately, but it's basically the same as invoices that would upload to QuickBooks Online, and we'll just have a look at existing one. So rent expense, let's try that one, see if that works. No. Okay, need to do a bit of configuration to my chart of accounts, sorry about that. And yeah, purchase orders are the same, just a pre-bill that you might end up billing the customer. And that's yeah, I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but that's the high level sort of functionality. Yeah, it's all about eliminating double data entry and saving you and your customer time and money by not having to recreate invoices and bills and customers and vendors in QuickBooks Online and FileMaker at the same time. So I might just sort of pause there at least and see if anyone's got any questions, and happy to answer those.
Well, that's a great whistle stop tour, Andrew. Looks great. Looks very similar to your other solutions you're saying. So let's see if anyone's got some questions.
Yeah, just to echo that, you were kind enough to let me have your Zero thing last year or the year before. I was most impressed. It was excellent. So the look and feel and the business processes are the same. So yeah, I'm looking forward to maybe even expanding into the QuickBooks arena here in the UK, given the challenges that we have currently with the desktop applications. So we might have to have a chat later.
Yeah, I mean, I've avoided doing anything with the desktop application. It's I've just focused on the QuickBooks Online, the cloud version. It just, yeah, it feels like, yeah, obviously there's more customers on the online platform, and I know that QuickBooks are certainly encouraging their customers to migrate from the desktop to the online platforms. I'm not sure in the long term, yeah, how long the desktop platform is going to be around for, to be honest. Yeah.
Are there any restrictions using the web direct version of this?
There shouldn't be. I haven't actually had time or got around to testing it, but everything I use is native FileMaker script steps and functions. So I wouldn't imagine there being issues. Nothing's optimized for web direct in terms of layouts or script steps. But the Zero one certainly works under web direct. So this actually started life as the Zero file essentially. So I would imagine that would work fine under web direct. You might need to tweak some of the layouts and scripts to make them web direct friendly. But yeah, there's nothing that isn't native FileMaker that won't work under web direct. Yeah.
So what would you see as the advantage, other than saving yourself a hell of a lot of time, which is why I picked your solution of writing your own connector? Is it just the sheer volume of data that's of programming that's involved in that?
Yeah, so yeah, we often say our solutions are developers' time-saving tools. They're like I've personally spent like hundreds of, if not thousands of hours on building this out and understanding the QuickBooks Online API and how it works and how you perform all the various API requests and what data you get back and what works and what doesn't. So it's purely, generally it's a time-saving tool. You can be up and running in sort of hours rather than tens of hours.
Absolutely.
So yeah, like we sell to customers and to developers, and for developers, it's generally, I haven't got time to learn this new API. I just want to get up and run quickly, show me how to do it. Here's a solution you can buy that will, for a few hours of what you'd probably normally charge for your hourly rate, show you how to do it basically. And yeah, you and your customer can be up and running much quicker than you would if you had to start from scratch. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And presumably you've got, does QuickBooks have webhooks built in, or have you had to develop your own webhooks in there?
Yeah, we haven't really added support for webhooks. We've got a list of things we want to add in future updates, and webhooks is certainly one of them. We've added them for Zero, and we've just actually spent the last month adding support for the, I don't know if anyone uses Otto from Proofgeist. They have a nice way of setting up a webhook receiver. So historically, we've created PHP files that work with the older FileMaker PHP API and the newer data API that you can use to be a webhook, but that involves PHP configuration and hosting it somewhere. And now that FileMaker doesn't bundle PHP with FileMaker Server, it's a bit more tricky. So last year we added support for showing you how to do it using Claris Connect webhooks, particularly now that everyone's going to be getting access to the whole Claris platform at some point in the near future, I'd imagine. That sort of made sense. And then we've added support for auto webhooks, and auto webhooks are by far the easiest way to set up a webhook and be up and running really quickly. So we'll do that for QuickBooks. Yeah, well, I haven't looked at the details yet, but I did see they have webhook support. In fact, I'll just have a quick just have a quick look at there. I did see it, and I've made a note of it to do it. Somewhere is. Yeah, I've seen it. I haven't looked into it in any great detail. Okay, so it's going to be a bit like Zero, where you've got to do this validation on intent. So it's not a simple, here's the payload, process it. You've got to verify it. Looks a bit ugly. And it's like Zero, that they'll give you a, they won't tell you what has changed. They'll tell you, they won't give you the details of what's changed. They'll tell you what has changed. In this case, a customer, and that's its ID. And the create means it was a new customer, or it could be an update. So you'd then have to go and pull down that record from QuickBooks to get the latest version of it. So yeah, webhooks are coming. Looks a bit like we'll have to do a bit of work around this whole verify process. So that's not something, that's something you do in PHP quite easily, but not something a lot of those platforms like Claris Connect or Auto handle easily. But yeah, webhooks will be coming. And typically that people want to notify when an invoice has changed or when a payment's been added to an invoice or when a customer's been updated. So that saves you having to manually go and pull down that record, essentially. Yeah.
And how about, and where do you see this fitting with things like Connect?
I believe Claris Connect already has some web QuickBooks a connector. I haven't actually looked at that. Actually, it's a good question. Let's have a quick look. I thought I'd seen it. Let's see if we can find the list. Somewhere you can get a list of all the connectors.
They do have QuickBooks. At least this is what I recall. Yeah, it's good because using
the QuickBooks, it just doesn't do everything that you can do with the API, but it has a queue of actions that you can run on it.
The important part, Doug, would be to do the authentication part, because if you remember from 2 meetings ago, the tricky part is creating the signature key. So if that can be done at the Claris Connect side, then everything else is manageable. I wonder, would it be possible to combine this somehow with a new way of creating custom API calls in Claris Connect?
So the custom connector key that we're building will allow you to actually build on top of that. So you could actually, you would be able to actually create your own connector to QuickBooks to do whatever you need to do. But the connection is essentially you'll still need a, I don't know with QuickBook, but either the API key or the secret ID. But that's how Connect will talk to it. So.
No, it's another part that when it works both on Xero and QuickBooks. When running on webhooks, there needs to be a header with the hash. So you basically need to sign with a key, and then Xero and QuickBooks will test and make sure that you're providing the proper response code based on the signature key they provided. And from my experience, this didn't work on Node-RED if you remember, some meetings ago, I mentioned that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite tricky. Yeah, so it's here it is.
Yeah, you probably could do it with the customer kit, because the customer connector kit will allow you to do a bit more stuff.
I'll send you. It's my understanding that this QuickBooks app, the triggers are all when things happen in QuickBooks. So you can't use it to upload from FileMaker to QuickBooks, for example. You can get notified when you can create a flow when one of these triggers has happened, like a customer's been created or an invoice has been created. So that's where you can pull that down, but doesn't let you can't use this to upload data from FileMaker to QuickBooks, I think. Is that right? Anyone?
Doug, do you know that? The answer to that?
Well, you can, because you can have a connector to your FileMaker server, and then you just need to actually set up a script with a parameter that's going to come from QuickBook. I would assume that's the way you were doing it.
That's a good example of where QuickBooks and Connect could integrate. DataBuzz's connector and Connect would work together.
It's just the I don't use QuickBooks and I'm not a big user of Connect, but if you can grab ideas basically, and then you can, because once you've got the action, so once you've actually asked QuickBooks to give you some information back, then you can actually have an action that's going to call a FileMaker script, where you could actually give it any type of parameters and will actually do the search for you and actually get the data back. So
yeah.
For the connection, are you on the ETS, Tazi, of Connect or not?
I'm not, no.
Okay, I might add you on top of that just to see if it works for that.
Sorry, Andrew, just to clarify, am I correct in saying that the QuickBooks connector doesn't need PHP like the 01 currently does?
Well, the 01, we've added support for Claris Connect because they have a preview 0 webhooks thing in Claris Connect now. We can't add support for Auto just yet because of the custom validation you got to do with 0 webhooks. We don't have any webhook support for our solution just yet. That's like about number 3 or 4 in our list of enhancements that we're going to make to it. But we will add support for Claris Connect because that's already got a built-in app. But it'll be for these supported triggers, and it'll be quite easy to run a script essentially in FileMaker based on one of those triggers happening. If I just go to our support website quickly. So we have these guides that like using webhooks with Claris Connect for each of their products, and it shows you how to create a trigger and so on and so on. And for some of for other products, like say DocuSign, we have an auto one as well. And Claris Connect is certainly easier than fiddling around with PHP files if you're not a PHP developer and got nowhere to host it. And Auto is even easier actually. If you use an Auto, you just generate a URL with an API key and put that into wherever you need to put that webhook URL into, and it's you can see it's pretty simple. So yeah, we'll add support. We'll create some PHP webhook receivers for the QuickBooks Online solution, and we'll add support for Claris Connect webhooks as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Excellent. Has anyone else got any questions?
Have you got some guideline pricing and stuff?
Yeah, it's just showing a website. with the exchange rate, with British pounds and euros, you're very lucky. The Aussie dollar is extremely poor at the moment. So yeah, we have three main licenses: the company license. That's not in. That's in the wrong order. Sorry. Yeah, the company license, which is $6.95 Australian dollars. So that's almost half price in British pounds. And then we have a vertical solution license, which is $12.95, and then we have a developer license, which is $18.95, and that's if you want to do multiple integrations with multiple of your customers over time. The vertical product license is if you're selling a off-the-shelf FileMaker solution and you want to incorporate this sort of functionality into it. And the company license is what a single customer would buy if they want to connect their own company license, or you do an integration with a company and you get the customer to buy one of these basically, and gives you a license to connect it to integrate it with their QuickBooks Online company.
Dead reasonable, thank you.
Upgrade from the company license to the developer license, and they will include 12 months of updates. So we'll obviously be making changes, adding new functionality, particularly in the first couple of years, based on customer feedback and changes to the QuickBooks Online API. So all the licenses include 12 months of maintenance, and you can buy 12 more months of maintenance for another 295 Australian dollars. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Great value, I think.
Agreed.
Work it saves.
Yeah, agreed.
Particularly with your exchange rate, yeah.
Yeah. Anyone else got anything they want to add? Or?
Yeah, Andrew, I have a question. What is the recommended way to integrate to an existing FileMaker solution? Because I've seen clients having your solution for Zero, and there has been discussions around that. If it's proper to just copy the scripts and copy some tables and get what you need and integrate it, or just keep it as a multi-file solution and assuming that it is a existing FileMaker solution, right? And keeping both files in sync. What would you recommend if someone asks you that question about, should I import your scripts and attach it to my tables, or should I just keep your file together with mine?
Yeah, look, great question, and this comes up a lot, and I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here. FileMaker obviously lets us solve problems in many different ways. There's many different ways you can approach a particular sort of workflow challenge, and with integration, there's like all things, there's pros and cons to each approach. If you use our file as is and create an external data source and push and pull data between it, so you have that multi-file approach, you can be up and running in a couple of hours, essentially, in a very short space of time. So that's the main pros. The cons are you've got another file, so you've got to handle authentication with another file, particularly if you're using FileMaker accounts, which can be a pain. And you'll have data that exists in sort of two different places. So you'll have your FileMaker invoice in your FileMaker solution, and you'll have a copy of that invoice in our solution, which isn't necessarily a problem. But yeah, we see lots of customers or developers just create a link from their customer's file to our file and add some scripts to push and pull data between them. Generally, it's to push a customer an invoice to our file and upload it. Yeah, that's very common. I don't have any problem with that. That gets them up and running really quickly, and often there's time constraints and budget constraints. The ultimate one is the embedding, what we call the embedding one, where you pull apart, you recreate you copy and paste the features that you want from our solution into your file, and then basically do some field mapping. And that's if we do an integration, that's the kind of integration that we do when we get hired to do these for customers, because they might just want customers, invoices and payments, and they obviously need authentication, and probably we've got to go and download things like the chart of accounts and the taxes and so on. But we prefer to, our approach is generally we prefer to not create a second file. We prefer to spend a bit more time embedded into their existing file, so that's using their layouts. There's no extra file, and then we're adding buttons on the invoice screen that say like, we'll go to their invoice screen and we'll add a button that says push to QuickBooks, and that's the kind of integrations that we do. But yeah, like I said, there's no right or wrong answer. Pros and cons to every approach: time, money, how quickly you need to get it up and running. So yeah, it's not really a simple answer to your question, but I don't think there is a perfect answer.
Sorry, Andrew. It's the one route that's better than the other if you're going to update with a newer release of your software.
Yeah, well, generally, and this has been an issue with all our solutions over the years. If we put out an update, generally we're adding new features and functionality. We're not making changes to the core file. So this happens a lot in our Shopify solution. Shopify have got a versioned API now, which gets updated every 3 months, and they force you to migrate to a new version of the API, and that new version of the API will often deprecate API endpoints and functionality from existing API endpoints. So there's a lot of change and breakage in the Shopify world. So replacing our file with a new one and using like the FileMaker's data migration tool to move your data across makes sense in that approach. But generally for most of our customers, if they did an embedding custom integration, once they've done that, they generally don't need to touch it. It's the QuickBooks Online API isn't going to change. They're going to break it, at least in my experience. And they've got millions of integrations around the world, so obviously they can't break it. But generally, it might be a case of, we've added a new feature like webhooks. Well, you can go and add that to an existing integration. Generally, it's sort of copying and pasting scripts, tables and fields, and maybe some layouts. So most of it can be copied and pasted across. There are advantages if you're doing it like an interface, external data source. If our file changes, you can just replace it and migrate your data across, and now that migrates FileMaker accounts. So that makes that a bit of a no-brainer. But generally, I tell customers, don't get too focused on future updates. Once you've done integration that meets your needs today, you're done. You don't need to touch it. It's going to keep working. If there's something else that you'd like down the track, then you can certainly go and add that. If we put out a new feature, like we'll be adding credit memos in the future, I think it's on our list, and webhooks and maybe sales receipts, I think, are the next 3 or 4 things that we want to attack. But they can always be added to an existing integration. So,
I think one other thing that's worth mentioning is that your support is great because you're always really responsive to queries. It's been my experience.
Oh, thank you. Yes. We try and be pretty responsive to. We've got a pretty well populated support website now. So we've got hundreds of frequently asked questions and videos and integration guides. So I think we've put up a dozen QuickBook ones already. So you can sort of, most people, it seems, want to watch it, happy to watch a 2-minute video these days rather than read a 10-page document. So we've tried to put up a lot of videos that essentially show you how to do it. Most of any question that we get asked more than twice goes into our FAQs bucket, where you can go and find it here. So we've already on to our sort of second page of questions that we're getting about QuickBooks integration. And then the integration guides, which are a bit more high level, and like here's the embedding one, and that shows it at a high level. It's how you go about copying things in which order at a high level in terms of getting our file into your file. And you don't need to get all of our file into your file. It's just the bits that you need. So if you just need customers, invoices, and payments, that's all you get. You can ignore everything else. Yeah.
Excellent. Any more on this, or should we move on to open discussion? What do people feel? see now. I see now. No, I'm jumping
silence. There is silence. A great presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much, Andrew. That's
excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me.
That's a pleasure. Yeah, I hope one day we'll see you in Brighton if you ever come back here.
Yeah, well, I was there in August, so it was summer, so I don't think you had a meeting on that month from memory. Yeah.
No, I'm generally not there in August, so no.
Oh.
And I missed you when I came to Sydney. I think I tried to get hold of you, but somehow we didn't meet up. It's my brother's in Sydney. But,
oh, okay. Oh, small world.
But yeah, you're welcome always to come. Just let us know. We'd like to have you at one of the meetings.
Yeah, I've never been to Brighton before, and I thought, oh, I'm pretty sure there's a user group there, and I checked it out, and you're closed for the summer. Yeah.
Yeah, basically. Sorry about that.
It's the only sun we get in the UK, so we make the most of it.
Yeah, well, it was quite warm actually. It was a pretty good summer from memory.
Yeah, so has anyone encountered any issues they want to talk about, or any features or anything interesting in the last few weeks since our previous meeting?
I got a different question for Ara, actually. I've got someone I'm doing some work with that they're using, you mentioned Peachtree, they're using Peachtree. So it's the US version of Peachtree. And they're needing to get data out of there. At the moment, they go through workflows and export data to spreadsheets and God knows what. I'm looking to, I'm looking to put it into either FileMaker, Click, or something else, just to get data out to analyze it. Excel may be an option. And you were saying you can do ODBC. Is there any other connectors that Peachtree does? Like, because what I've got ODBC for some of the SaaS and cloud solutions that I've got, ODBC is not really supported. So it's like REST connections and stuff like that.
Yeah, interesting enough, I think the accountant sitting out in the US has the same problem as the accountant sitting in the UK, because they want to get the stuff out and analyze it. So I'm not surprised they're talking to you. But in terms of Peachtree has its own software development kit. So I've looked at extending our solution sets to that, but that would mean I'd then have to enroll into the US developer program to get the software development kit to get the stuff out. So at the moment, from what I understand, they have got the same ODBC capabilities that the Sage 50 software has. So that normally then allows you to get it into Excel and do something else. The only other thing I've looked at in the past in terms of automating some of this stuff is there's desktop software like Automate It and stuff like that, which can mimic keystrokes.
Yeah.
Which is a bit of a hack, but it depends how desperate you are. At 3 a.m, people don't normally care about a hack, as long as it's ready by 10 when they come in.
Yeah, there is that, and that's what I'm facing. At the moment, they've got an administrator that basically works within that solution, and I was thinking, well, if I can get them to put FileMaker in, at least if I get FileMaker, it's exactly the same logic that you approach for your solutions. Like, well, if I can get FileMaker to talk to it, I've got all the freedom with all the coding and all the scripting I can do within FileMaker. I can give them the moon on a stick, but I can't do that if I can't connect to it. And the problem is that side of it. So I'm thinking maybe a FileMaker client, have that do something, and in worst case scenario, I can have FileMaker then upload that to move that data into Google, because they're a Google partner, move that data into Google Sheets. Then I can get any system to attach to Google Drive and then pull that data from there. I know it's a real horrible workaround, but it would work. I'm literally moving data around, but FileMaker could be the tool that does that. So.
There's one other thing that I've looked at is that, so for example, the Sage 50 stuff goes back to, it was written 30 years ago or something, using DBase tables in the old days. Anyway, cut a long story short, you can do a Google search. There are companies that provide custom ODBC drivers. Either they've done a good job rather than the software vendor who hasn't. I've got a feeling there's a company called CData, if memory serves me right, that does some ODBC drivers.
I've found that one as well. I found that already.
So it might be worthwhile having a quick look at what I'd look for, the Peachtree ODBC driver rather than the Sage 50 ODBC driver. And I know my guys have looked at porting our stuff to the US version. To be honest, a bit like Claris and FileMaker, we've got far too many unhappy UK customers to contend with at the moment to try and sort out their problems. and give them give them light in darkness than start dividing our resources to the US marketplace. But I would go down that track, and I'd go and find out, because Peachtree's also an old, let's call it, established accounting application. So the problem has been solved before. And the thing you want to do is I would do is check to see if some of the old existing tools could be used to get the data out, because you're right, as soon as you get the data out, FileMaker just gives it a lease of life. It's a bit like going from old hard drives to SSDs. You get an awful lot of extra value for money in return from the investment you've made in your QuickBooks. And these and Peachtree's, because those guys will have, I've got one guy actually I've just done a project for. They had Xero. They moved from Sage to Xero because they thought, do you know what, web, fantastic, and all the rest of it. They get into there and they find they've got to take 15 ruddy add-ons to just get a sales order out and do some stock control. And then all of a sudden they've got a bit of a mess. So I've just converted 6 big companies from a big conglomerate back into Sage from Xero. But for that, in that scenario, again, the problem they had was they couldn't get the data out. So if you get anywhere with the Peachtree stuff, let me know. But if you also want me to nose around, let me know what you want, and I'll have a word with my developers and find out how far they got with it.
Super, brilliant. I'll have a dig around and see what I can find. Super, thank you.
Yeah, pleasure. Oh, hello. Tony's got a hand up. How did you manage to do that? Because I've been looking for it all day.
Oh, there's a little thing bottom middle.
Yeah.
So if I may jump in here. So Gary mentioned the blog post that the engineering people did. And I thought the title, Working with Data Types and Fields and Comparisons, one of my favorite blog posts because it's kind of a bread and butter topic for which I have affinity. And I enjoyed it. I do have 1.5 questions and a comment for this esteemed group. I did drop, I did a little write-up, multitasking, and I dropped it in the chat. So, click the, download it. It's not bad. I sent it, Doug, to you. Your email, you might have gotten it already. You did, thumbs up, thank you. In case you want to pass it on or not, it's okay either way. I'm getting by with what I'm doing. The first thing that I think is worth mentioning is there was a line in the code. I read the post 3 times. I think it was a good post. There was a line where it was sort of, I guess, using and or recommending the get as text. And I thought, I don't use the get on text, and things have been working just well. Because I think, and this would be a question for this esteemed group, that when you set a date field to a string, that there's a built-in typecasting or conversion. I think it's called typecasting. So the example, and it's in the thing that I dropped into the chat, setting a date field to a timestamp, it'll do not just a typecasting, but also it'll do the thing where it takes the date portion out of the timestamp. And I favor kind of, less, if I can get away with less code, and if the typecasting is reliable, I get less code. Makes me happy, easier to read. That was one thing. And I think on the flip side, when you're reading out of a field, if you're setting a variable to a field that is of type date as defined in schema, I do believe it comes out as a date. Likewise, if you set a variable to a number field as defined in the schema, I think it comes out as a typecast as a number. And I think you can verify these with the Monkey Bread plugin. And this is different than when you do have to typecast something like if you're sending a bundle of text across the wire using maybe the old-fashioned 6 fried rice, where you do have to do some typecasting. But my goal, again, is to write as little code as possible. And if I know when the platform got built-in typecasting, as the 2 examples I just mentioned, I'd prefer not to do the get as number or the get as text. So those are 2 hopefully somewhat controversial topics to enliven the meeting. And then the final thing that I had, and I dropped it into the chat, was there was I think a good YouTube video by somebody. I put a link in there. And I dropped in something because I was really digging deep. And that's long enough ago that I don't remember what I said. Anyway, there's a bunch of topics there. I'm glad you guys are recording, and hopefully some of that was useful. And maybe we'll all learn more about how to do more with less code.
Yeah, in answer to one of your questions, I know that if you use a variable in a dialog box, and you use the data from the user has entered in the dialog as a number, it will come out as text. So you have to specifically set that to a number.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good idea. So, you know, the flip side is like, when are these text conversions happening? Certainly if you're building a letter, you've got to do sometimes conversion, maybe format the date. And the one I know for a fact, or 99% sure, that, you know, if you do 6 fried rice, now obviously if you're doing JSON, there's all that kind of typecasting that's built into those functions. But I haven't done testing on that. Anyway, I think it's an interesting topic, and I'm pretty sure we're all using these features. Like, who isn't using date fields in their solution? Raise your hand. So bread and butter topic.
I wish, because
I can take over on that. I can take over on that. It's a very interesting topic, and in Greece, our local is the date format is same as the UK format, but the decimal format is the decimal point is a comma symbol instead of a dot. And me working with UK and US, and you can understand the experience I have gained through this process. So basically, the most important thing to remember is we once did a very big solution handling hundreds of thousands of records every day. And for performance reasons, we implemented export records and import records technique with CSV. So that's the most, that's the first thing that to remember, that when you're exporting data in CSV, it's all text. So when it gets imported back, it will not be cast as you would think. So if you export dates and numbers with decimals in my format, and then you import it using US format, everything is going to be a question mark. So,
sorry.
Yeah, so the great thing about the dates and timestamps is exactly what you said, Tony. I'm using it a lot. I also had to sometimes create stored calculate fields or calculation fields that are text type and are using that ISO FileMaker format, which is with the plus signs. And it's also working with timestamps. So that's a great and consistent way to move dates and timestamps around in FileMaker using CSV and JSON. So whenever JSON is involved, I'm using strings with that format, and it's unbreakable. I had to find out the hard way. However, for decimal formats, I haven't found yet a consistent way that it would work. Excuse me, both with comma and decimal. A nice workaround that hardcore old school database people do is not have numbers in decimal format. So if you need pounds, you would do from cents. If you need basically anything, it would be an integer. The other way is break up the integer part and the decimal part, but that's just not writing less code, Tony. So yes, from my experience, handling the decimal format when it's being casted in text by FileMaker in a way that you cannot handle it, which is export records or JSON, it's tricky to handle the decimal format.
So when you export, sorry Tony, when you export your records in your locale, if you've got the decimal in there, that FileMaker will export that as a comma.
Yes, and when you import it back, it's going to ignore it as it does for every text character. So 2.5 is going to be 25.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly where I was going. I was like, yeah, that's great. It's superb. Look how much money we made. Yes, everything's in millions. Yeah. Okay, fine. Sorry, Tony. Where you go, mate?
No, and thank you. And Stathis, thank you, because you made me think of, I believe, just one more thing that was in the engineering blog post. So, all right. So in the engineering blog post, I'm reading it, and it said that this would store a date and it showed a string. Now we all know that FileMaker does date operations like add a date, date and time, and timestamp operations. At some point in the process, it converts the date, time, and/or timestamp into a number. It seemed to be making the assertion that the storage of the date was done as a string, which a little bit surprising and/or interesting. It made me think, like, okay, at what point in the process does it do a conversion to number in order to perform math? The math, like roll it forward a date or give me the last date of the previous month or all that kind of stuff. And maybe it is storing as a string, and then when you read it in a script or whatever, it figures out the localization of the file. And Stathis, you probably know all this stuff more because I'm a bit of a gringo here doing mostly US systems. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. And I would have to believe that the idea that the date is indeed stored as a string on the hard drive is accurate, because it's coming from the engineering people. They would know, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
The final, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, from my experience, from what I've read, at least, the dates and timestamps are stored internally as numbers, which is why if you get current date as a number and you write that number in a date field, it will not work. But if you instead use the ISO format with the plus symbols that you posted in the chat, this will work. So it's, excuse me. So it's obviously saving the dates and timestamps in numbers internally, which means
and when you say internally, Stathis, when you say internally, so you're making an assertion internally. I take that to mean on the hard drive, on the disk, within the file. Saying the same thing 3 different ways. You know what I mean? As opposed to on the disk in permanent storage, whereby
somewhere down that we don't have access.
Well, within the file encrypted and so forth and so on. Anyway, it doesn't completely matter, except it really is an interesting topic, and I think it's one we benefit from a deeper understanding. And so I was reading with I tried to make an infographic. I kind of gave up because I had too many questions to do an infographic out of it. And if someone wants to give me the home phone numbers of the engineers, I'll be happy to follow up. Just kidding. Leave them alone. Let them do their work. The final, and I'll say final comment. I had a really good point, but I think I forgot. All right, I'll shut up for a while. Other people must have thoughts on this.
Yeah, Stathis, I agree with you. I've had to convert. I quite often convert to ISO format for date and timestamp. Find it works really, really well. And I think the other comment I had was sometimes if you use the number format for dates and timestamps, you can get quite a large number, which sometimes doesn't transfer that well. That was my
what I've done in the past is a workaround that basically identifies the last non-letter character in a number casted as text, and assume that this is a decimal part. Of course, it's an assumption. You might have 5,000 typed as 5,000 dot and the decimal part, and that probably would work because I'm just trying to figure out what is the last part. But if you type 5,000 for 5,000, it would make it 5. But this is just for data migration and has been working consistently, just breaking the text part and assuming that the left part is integer and the right is decimal. I have a very interesting topic on that area, which is I recently found out that OData doesn't play with get UUID number.
What is that? Because the number's too long?
Yes.
Doesn't
like, and it's funny because I was guiding an external developer for a project that they were going to use the data in some other way, and based on the requirements, I guided them towards OData, and they said, "I'm getting the records. Here are the records. In the OData response, this is the OData.id, and there's a link. You can use that link to get that record, and it doesn't work." And I said, "Yes, yes, it doesn't. Use that API instead."
The only person I'd talk about that if it's OData is talk to John Renfrew, see whether or not he's come across it.
Well, it's not. It's the issue is JSON has. If you have a number in JSON, you can have a maximum of 20 characters. And so, if you want to use a get as U number into your system, you've got to basically put it as a string, so as a text string, so that you can actually expand how much you want to do. So you should, if you use get UID, it will work better for you than using get UID number.
I know I can set the details. You know why I cannot set the details, Doug? But on what you said, basically, there's a great beeswax blog post about the data and how you can modify long numbers that are more than 19, 20 characters, that is the JSON scientific threshold, using Atom XML. It's a great article. I highly recommend it. I will post it in our chat. The thing is that those parameters will not get into the JSON, into the body. So you can create a OData call, and you can send an XML body. You can request an XML response, and there shouldn't be any JSON involved. It's just the URL parameters. So it's either on the URL, in the URL, or you are using the filter option, which is again a URL parameter, which is why I would expect the call to work, because it's potentially it could work without using any JSON notation.
You're saying the JSON you're sending is a number. So your number is longer. Your get UUID number is longer than 20 characters. And
it's
so
it's in the URL. It's not in the JSON. OData, you can do host / version 4 OData API, whatever, / table name, parentheses, and the ID. So it's not in a body.
Well, at that point, it's a string, not a number.
No, it works. It works with a number, but you need to not use single quotes. But the number needs to be less than 19 characters. But the number is not in the body, Doug. It's a get call, which means that there is no body. You can request XML, which means no JSON is involved. And the only place that you specify that long number is the URL, if you're just doing a get record, or the filter option in the URL parameter, which means, again, JSON should not be involved, which is the weird part. Anyhow, that's just an update. I guess there will be some progress from the Claris side. But yeah, I thought it's worth mentioning on that format topic.
Cool. Any more questions from anybody? Anyone got anything else they want to chat about? Or
yeah, is there a chance that we can get somebody to do a presentation on QR codes and barcodes using, say, data logic scanners.
Right. Interestingly enough, next online one, we are going to be talking about scanning barcodes and using a bit of text to speech, amongst other things. So that may have some relevance for you. That's coming up.
Thank you.
Can I ask why you're asking the question?
Yeah, because basically my project from years ago when I first went down to where was it? The Apple training on FileMaker. They were demonstrating barcodes being scanned in, and obviously barcodes have now progressed onto QR codes, and I'm still very interested in the system or FileMaker handling those.
Just to add to that, I've just done 3 projects using NETOM scanners of Amazon.
You got it. It's being blurred.
Is it being blurred? Okay, so yeah, there are different types. There you go. NETOM. They're dirt cheap, so I wouldn't go to those to start off with. But I like my Star Trek a bit more than that, so I've gone with the what every woman really wants on their finger, a scanner ring. That's much better. You can go zap, zap, zap with your finger. That's actually what you want. You don't want diamonds. And then the other one, which is actually pretty damn good, is one called Chiteng. These are all.
Are you making these, Ara? Are you making
I wish. No. What I do is all the warehousey stuff. I go out, do my YouTube videos. I pretend here's one that works. Here's one that works, and then the bloody customer goes and some other gets another make, and I've got to do them. So I've got zillions of these things sitting around the place. One thing I have found is cheap doesn't necessarily mean bad.
No, that's true.
So all of these things are sub 30, 40 quid.
Nice.
Right. So I've got a couple of trade counters that have got Sage on the back end. The trade counter's got his iPhone and iPad, and that's actually the primary one for scanning QR codes. And that works really well because you can get a stand and it just sits there and it just polls. And you just bung it underneath a bit like Tesco's, and that works fine. I've got a couple of others whereby they've got they sell I don't know 6-foot bits of board, so that ain't going to go onto a scanner. The scanner, you know, the mountain doesn't go to Mohammed. Mohammed's got to go to mountain kind of stuff. So then they've got these kind of scanners, Bluetooth against the iPad, and then they go off and go zap, 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 zap. So these things work quite well. Now, on the back of all of that, none of these applications produce the QR code in the first place. So with the latest add-ons for FileMaker, the QR generation bit actually is quite good on there. And that normally uses a call to Google to do that.
It's a very simple API, the Google one for the QR code creation. I've used it before.
Yeah,
I found a few problems with doing that, by the way. If you're trying to do it en masse, if you're doing like a batch of orders that you're trying to do, it just sort of skips every now and again if there's a lag. If anyone's got a better way of doing a bulk creating of QR codes, let me know.
I've come across that. So yeah, so one of my sites, they're bringing on 10,000, 12,000 product codes, and you send it on a script loop to Google and brings the stuff back. A few are missed, and then I'll have another script that goes through for the bits that are missed that are 0 length and redoes those. But they're pretty damn quick, and they happen once in a while.
Just the use case, that wasn't really great for the use case that we had at the time.
Yeah, do it at 3 in the morning. They'll never know. They'll come in at 10 o'clock at this time, right? So,
I think I did see a JavaScript one somewhere, so you could actually have the JavaScript code in your solution, in which case you wouldn't be.
Yeah, there are loads of different options, and I tried most of them.
Well, I was going to say, but Gary's the man who knows everything about scanners.
I was going to say, yeah, we do ours. I like the pricing that Ara mentioned because we use Socket Mobile, so we use for ours. So we've got, and they're not cheap. They're 200-300 quid a pop. They do 1D, 2D barcode scanning. The nice thing with the Socket Mobile is they charge in about 30 minutes. They last about a day. And they're totally Bluetooth. We've got, what, 65, 70 iPads, all running FileMaker in the warehouse, all with scanners. Those things are bulletproof. I mean, they just work and work and work and work and work. For us, what we're scanning, we have to scan every type of barcode. And people just say, oh, yeah, a barcode's a barcode. It is not. I tell you, it's not.
There'll be some more talk on that next session.
Yeah, exactly. We'll cover that.
Keep up powder dry.
We've got to scan manga products, which is Japanese weird created barcode that don't follow any standard that you could possibly fathom, and the scanner's got to read it. The idiots that publish silver barcodes on a silver background, try and get a scanner to read that one. So when we found the Socket Mobiles are the ones that sort of get through most of the detritus that's out there, and they work. But they're not cheap. We started with the Wand data, similar to the Data Logics. They're the LS2800s. They're solid. They're great desktop ones. You can get a shoe to put it in, so it's permanently pulsing as well. So it creates a magnet around the thing to make it pulse, like Ara was saying, that you can just wand stuff underneath it. But it depends on your throughput. If you're not worried about speed, I wouldn't pay for the sockets, because the sockets are the speed ones. They're the ones that we can scan super, super quick. They're fast on the Bluetooth, but I think if you really, really want speed, go wired. Go wired every time. Get a USB wired scanner, hook it up somehow, have it pulsing. That's why Tesco's have it permanently 3-dimensional scanners on about 4 different arcs, because they just want to wand something over and it finds the barcode automatically. So if it's speed what you want, yeah, you're going to have to pay a reasonable price for it. But if you want just quick, as I was saying, if you're doing a convention, you just want an iPad or an iPhone in your pocket, and you need to scan once every 2 or 3 minutes, use the bloody camera on the iPhone. That'll work. It'll do a great job. You want to scan more than 3 or 4 a minute, you can't use the iPhone. So it takes you 20 minutes to try and get the camera to work out where the bloody barcode is. So yeah, we'll cover this on future event, but we've got plenty of people that are involved in this and do this.
And in case I forget, Ian, if there's specific questions you've got or specific use cases you're interested in, bung us a line before the meeting, and we'll try and get it in there.
There was one thing that I've recently been asked for. It's for a company in Dubai that imports phones. So you've got 2 problems. One is one box has got 6 ruddy barcodes on it, 2D, 1D, up, right, left, right.
Yeah.
But now what's happening is they're actually putting, imagine you've got 10 phones and each one of them has got its own unique serial number. They put all 10 on one page.
Mm-hmm.
So what they want is for you to take a photo or the scan of the side of the palette and read all 256 phones that are on that palette in one go. And there are systems that can do that.
Yeah, I was going to say it's AI. Apple's doing that in their photo stuff. The AI stuff will do that.
Yeah. And they're also doing things like stock counts. So instead of going zap, 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 you take a photo of the bin, and then the photo gets analyzed and says, you know, you've got 34 tellies in that bin. So there are other things that are coming out the woodwork saying, I'm too lazy, I don't want to do it properly. I just want to take a picture and get the picture to do it. So yeah, interesting.
The barcodes with the pictures are more accurate, but I saw saying it, well, God, I'm going back years. DevCon, that was that. This is how long ago it was. We haven't had a DevCon for how many years. But I was at DevCon where they were doing using Amazon's AI to take a photo of a warehouse, and it could analyze the stock it could see on the shelf and do an AI to work out what items are on that shelf, providing they're all face out. You could just take a picture of the entire rack, go bang, and it's counted every bin, every shelf, and worked it all out. And the accuracy was like 99.9%. So you could have someone scanning every individual box and just take one photo and go upload it, and I'm done. So that accuracy, chances are the human will make more errors scanning individually than the photo of all of it would do. So there's stuff out there to do that. Clever stuff.
Technically, we're at the end of the meeting, and
we are.
Switch to virtual bar time. I don't know if there's anyone wants to keep in for recording's sake. or should we just switch to the virtual bar?
Good session. Thank you, gents.
Thank you for coming. It only works when you lot turn up.
Thanks very
No point me and Jul sitting here on our own.
Yeah, it has been. No, it hasn't been known.
That's
It's been
known.
discussed as a possibility. But
Well,
no.
I will stop the recording and just say thank you everyone for participating, questions,
Thank you for everyone
presentations, all those that presented. Thank you very much. And I will stop that and we'll continue to the virtual bar. So recording has been stopped. Thank you everyone.
Bye.